Exciting times for the ANC in KZN as we launch the ANC KZN podcast. And who better to be my first guest than, of course, the Secretary General himself, Mr. Fikile Mbalula. Nopala, good afternoon and welcome.
No, thank you, and thank you for having us. And indeed, it's exciting times. It's good to be here, and thank you very much. Yeah.
Do you watch podcasts?
I do watch podcasts. I mean, I don't want to mention names of which podcast I watch, but there are many. I think it's a very important development in the media mix going forward, that we now have got podcast, and the reach out in terms of the audience is much bigger and better. So it's very good that the ANC also grab this opportunity during elections and even beyond, just to keep in touch with membership, with people about things that the movement does.
It's important to keep up digitally. I mean, the fourth revolution is upon us. It would be a bit strange if the leaders were not part of that revolution.
Yeah, I think, look, as a self-respecting party, part of renewal adaptation means the technological highway. You know, when globalization came into being, and one of the things it did is to make the world smaller. You can relate with your friends far and wide, across borders, just close. And it has also been modernized. We have moved from messengers, where you sit behind the computer, to smartphones. And from smartphones to podcasts, you can talk to somebody anywhere in the world, just like that. And for a self-respecting party, adaptation and renewal means that you've got to be in that space. Communication, you have to move faster, unless you define yourself irrelevant.
Well, we're in that space now, so
Yeah.
This is exciting. Before we get into the real stuff, we know you have spoken a lot about a lot of different things since you took over your position as SG. But on the lighter side of things, we always go back to calling you Razzmatazz.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, the youth who are watching now via YouTube, online, who don't know Razzmatazz, remind us, usichazele ukuthi ubani uRazzmatazz, how did that name come about?
Well, Razzmatazz was born out of a concrete experience of work. I became Minister of Sports, and then they gave me the name Razzmatazz, and I'm Dinga, because the things that we're doing were like Razzmatazz. But that's not original. I mean,
Razzmatazz like magic.
yeah, something like that, something big, exciting, vibey, and all of that. I mean, it finds itself in the spaces of the popular culture. So if you were there when Hillbrow was born, there was a popular pub there they called Razzmatazz, and Brenda Fassie used to perform there, all the artists. And I mean, it was an important place in our age of the pop culture. That time they used to call it bubblegum music. And then, so many people mixed there, and in a way like that. Even apartheid agents like de Kock in the TRC, we know in the files that that's where most of our comrades were arrested and basically been poisoned at Razzmatazz.
Razzmatazz.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now in today's life, Razzmatazz really comes with the character, but at the same time with the work that we're doing at sport. And people said, no, that's Razzmatazz. We did a lot of things that were quite exciting, many products that we launched. But Razzmatazz comes with speed of doing things, We brought in the Netball League. Today it's sponsored by Telkom. We went to get it to get support for them from brutal what is this drink? Alcohol.
Brutal fruit.
Yeah, brutal fruit from SAP. We got them a sponsor from there and put in the money there. We also brought in basketball. We connected South Africa and the NBA and NBA Africa. And we brought the first NBA match in the country. We brought Serena and Venus in the country to play, testimonial match in the Republic. And then we did a whole lot of things. We're part of the Diski Challenge.
Yes.
In terms of the league, as you see it now with Super Sport and all of that. And then we also launched the school sport project. We're big on the sports awards, excellence, recognition, and all of that. And then we made it very clear, we fetch champions, we put champions on the bus, not mediocre. And then Sundowns won, the Africa champs. And then we put them on the bus, we welcomed them at the airport. Our Olympians, they won big. And then we used to reward them financially, put the money in the pocket of the athlete. We're a department without money, but beskrevul, and then making things razzmatazz like that. Because these are people really in a world and a society where there is an earning for role models. Yeah. It was important to launch that platform, that people don't end up following plastic and they think that is substance. So we say, yeah, are your stars? And then we really made them look like stars, deservedly so, on the red carpet in many ways. So Razzmatazz was something like that. Policy very strong in terms of transformation, because that is the pillar of the ANC transformation agenda.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
We are nothing without talking about transformation and transformation. So that's Razzmatazz.
That's what I was going to say, is that the name might have sounded lightweight, but the policy behind it was quite strong. And at that time, maybe the first generation of actual celebrities that we had as a country coming out or into democracy. Yeah. So that was exciting. So let's get into the serious business of why you are in Durban. The ANC manifesto launch is happening this weekend in KZN. Why KZN, SG?
We launched our manifesto here in 2019, and when we won the elections, Moses Mabhida have been good to us. But over and above that, when we start a campaign, we started in a big province, like KwaZulu-Natal. The biggest chunk of South Africa's vote comes from this province. So as a big party, we need to come here and announce, what we want to do, where we actually come from, but also thank the people of the province for their continued support and belief in the African National Congress. So this is home. We took it from the IFP, and then we governed in this province over time, and we made a lot of changes. And it is time when we launched the manifesto, like I was in Bambata yesterday. The first rural development projects of this government were tested in Bambata. Clinics were built there. There were no roads there. And then water, and sanitation and clean water. Our projects started to find expression there in Bambata. So I was there and happy the media followed us there. But the story of Thabo Mbeki's government and administration of rural development started here in this province. And it was probably a neglected province, big as it is, rural in nature. And the ANC came into power. And as we're a populace of 36 million, today we're 60. Chunk of that come from this province. You can see that our challenges are growing exponentially. And as we continue to govern, and it is important that when we announce our intentions and our resolve, our way forward and what we want to do going forward, we come to KwaZulu-Natal.
And so it has happened this year, being obviously the election year, that every party seems to be coming to KwaZulu-Natal. It's like a Casper Nyovest, fill up the stadium kind of situation. What has that meant? The fact that other parties have seen this particular province as a relevant place for them to launch their manifestos?
It is not a relevant place. They just want to prove their muscle and challenge the ANC. Last year in September, we announced that we will launch our manifesto in KwaZulu-Natal in February. We had not finalized the date, and later on we finalized 24th. And then they followed. We're going to Moses Mapida. So we set the trend. Very good, because we're incumbent. And then others to prove their worth, and that they call themselves government in waiting. So we've got to go where the ANC goes, because you are not something serious unless you fill up a big stadium like FNB. So it wins them accolades. It's a status symbol. Filling up stadiums for the ANC, if it is not full, we'll be shocked to ourselves. It's part of our DNA. It's a reflection of a mass party that we are. And coming to Moses Mapida is a reflection of that. So, and then others followed and so on. Nonetheless, we are not in competition. Give each other space. What is important is what we will say to our people this coming Saturday. But over and above, our manifesto is not a formulation of new policies which are untested. We have implemented more than 80% of our promises in the last election. In our review, we have revealed that. Nobody, including Fact Check, have challenged that. And then as we finish towards these 3 months, most of the things will be done. Our Achilles heel is load shedding.
And water, might I add, in KZN.
Yes, and water. Obviously, South Africa is faced with a bigger challenge of water scarcity. And this is the challenge that have visited us, the same as load shedding. And these are some of the challenges we're actually dealing with. And we have now moved a step further. We have envisaged this problem years back. And that is why Mzimvubu has taken off in the Eastern Cape. So the next 5 years, the problem of water and scarcity in terms of the dams were built, starting from in Limpopo, where the dams and the projects were not finished. We're finishing them. And also the agreements were finished with the Lesotho government to extend our project, beyond where it was. It's something else. So you are looking at the next 5 years of boom if there will be no COVID-19. Like it happened. And you can look at it and look at what the critics and detractors say, but you look at how we have been resilient post COVID-19, and despite the fact that of all the challenges we've faced, our economy has shown resilience. Minister of Finance announced yesterday that our GDP have reached a debt ratio. Something like unheard of. How resilient is that? Debt ratio tells you that this country this year is going to realize boom. If the ANC was to be out of power, those who will come in, they will enjoy this good work we've started and make this country look like we've been sleeping on the job. And then which is the foundation we would have started.
You've talked about rural development, and you talk about this foundation, which you have. It's a big announcement of what was laid out in the announcement. The last 30 years of the ANC being in power, besides rural development and some of the things you've mentioned, what have been your highlights personally as now SG of the ANC?
Let me tell you, when we came into power, we actually faced not even a conundrum, a biggest challenge of our lives. Today, I was talking about the deployment policy of the ANC, tracing it from down in 1990 to 2004 with the adoption of the RDP and ready to govern. You can mention all documents, constitutional guidelines, Harare Declaration. So, as the ANC, coming into power with the RDP, it was like Father Christmas. We were saying to our people, what are the immediate things that you wanted us to do for you? They said it: housing, water, electricity.
The basics.
The basics. The basic needs of our people. Our people are not connected. And boom, when we got into government, there is a big debt that the apartheid regime had left with us. And then what do? And then we're faced with a debt. Many countries that were in our position, if you juxtapose, Brazil, then resorted to structural adjustment programs, but also the advice that they got from the World Bank. We chose the path of growth, employment, and redistribution, which meant that we've got to focus on macroeconomic stability. But how do we do that without compromising on the basic needs, what we are addressing the RDP? So we had to address that. We are inheriting these state-owned enterprises, but they are of no value. Which were not of no value for their families and everybody. We sold those things, Aventuras and all of that. We had to restructure the state assets to address the question of financial capital to finance the RDP. And our economy was boomed to zero in terms of attracting financial, direct investment inside the country. So what do? We're faced with all of this. And then we had to reprioritize. But we had to ensure that we meet the basic needs. Our policy of alleviating our people from poverty had to be implemented. We had to implement a comprehensive social security net like never been seen before in the world. From 36 million to 60 million people today, we're still going stronger. And we had to do all of those things. And we had to intervene in terms of lifting those who are not even in the periphery altogether. And then we had to intervene in terms of saying, you are there, you want water, you want electricity, but you can't afford. As it is in the country today, people don't pay services. They are all dependent on the state. And it is because of what we inherited from apartheid and the steps that we had to take. And it set us at loggerheads with our allies. Yeah. Because they thought, no, this emphasis of macroeconomic stability at the expense of growth and employment is problematic. But we would have collapsed. This country would have been, something else. We would have been out of power like that in no time. Yeah. So we struggled, come to 1999, and then 2004, we registered the 2/3 majority. Economy stabilized. There was boom in the economy. We were able to create jobs. Even though growth, we realized in the economy was jobless growth. But at the end of the day, there was stability. But exponentially, on the other hand, our country was growing. Yeah. And like it is now, we're 60 million people. And the interest of the people then were increasing. So our policies equally had to continuously change and adapt. So the ANC, when we say it was better before apartheid, for those who have never lived under apartheid or who have been sellouts under apartheid, they will be the first to say apartheid was better. But you talk to Mbalula, Tintswalo. I'm Tintswalo. When I arrived in my township, I came from the rural areas and they were suffering from what is called forced removals, drought. My father had to sell everything for 400 rands. 400 rands. 2 horses and 6 cows fed per man. I mean, there was no Angola at that time. We're not exposed to it. 6 sheep. They were about 20 or 30. They were all sold by Hotel Class, my father, for 400. And then forced removals put us 1979 in Butsabe, a biggest farm, a farm that grew to become Butsabe called Omverwacht. And when we arrived there, we had nothing. And then this is where apartheid put us. The first experience of me for a house and water and everything else is through the ANC government. Me. I'm not talking about me as a struggle. I'm talking about Fikile Mbalula in terms of growing up in the farm and then here come with my family and then dependent on state grants and everything else. But at the same time, I wouldn't have been here and realized everything I could, having struggled and all of that, because we realized everything after we realized freedom. But when we arrived in 79, there was nothing for us. It only dawned to us that there is a better life, things can happen. Come 1994, after 79, we then started to have tap in our yard. But when we arrived in Botshabelo, we were given water by tanks and all of that. We used to queue in a big line queue to get water from these trucks. And then you miss, it's gone. And then only the ANC restored dignity. Then the tap was moved from the street inside the household. Then we had our own tap. And then we were entitled to water. None of us were working, we were at school. My father was a pensioner, my mother was a domestic worker. They couldn't afford to pay water. Then the ANC implemented what is called an indigent policy to cushion the poor. That's what the ANC did. And it's still being implemented today. 3,000 liters of water per week or whatever for free. So we started to learn that you don't waste water because it's a scarcity. Nothing is for free, as much as government is giving. That time we were activists, we were comrades, but we have experienced this, both the experience of apartheid and the experience of the new dispensation. So when a person argues that apartheid was better, I normally say, because they've never had this experience. And under apartheid, probably their families were selling out. And
what do you say to somebody, SG, who now that the historical debt is not such a big worry for the ANC leadership, to somebody who is still hoping for that change that you saw come in, somebody who's without a tap in their yard currently, because population explosion has made it that it's hard to keep up with everybody's basic needs. What can you say? What do they look forward to in the next 5 years?
This dynamic of what is happening is not just population explosion. You are faced now with a phenomenon of urbanization. People are moving from the rural areas to the townships. If you look here at Kwamashu and Umlazi and so on, look at the township, it's growing. And there are new settlements everywhere else. You go to Joburg, it's something else. I was in Joburg in Sidibeng last week at the Ramaphosa Square. People have just settled in a big Ramaphosa Square. They don't have ablution facilities and all of that. And then they tell me, we are settled here, we need water, we need electricity, we need roads. The challenge facing our government is urbanization. And as a phenomenon, how do you contend with that? From what we need to achieve as a government. Now, for somebody who's a critic who doesn't govern, doesn't understand those challenges. So the easiest part in our country today is to become an opposition. It's a milking cow. I mean, it's wonderful. You know, me and you, we can sit here and become opposition. Our job is not to do anything. It's just to tell ANC didn't do that. I will do that. I was listening to a manifesto of another political party. I mean, that thing is unrealistic. These guys have even stopped thinking. They don't do research. They take the voter for granted. I mean, people were asking, if you say you give people on top of what they are getting now, 350, you'll double it up. You know how much is 350 per month? That we're giving to people to settle 350 is over 7 billion rand. And then somebody says, no, I'll double up. Remember, There are other challenges that we are faced with. You are selling people a pipe dream. Some of them should be arrested for the things that they say without research, and they are not being challenged. We are discussing things that are not realistic and all of that. We don't deal with the content of what is in this manifesto. So the manifesto of the ANC is going to be realistic. It's no longer a manifesto after 30 years of democracy where we're thumb sucking, we don't know where we are going, how many people are unemployed, what are we going to do with that? The key question before us as we go now as the NEC is that what are we supposed to do that we have not been able to achieve in different areas where we have actually failed? And that is what our manifesto is all about. It's not about, there is a problem with electricity. The question is, how are you going to defeat load shedding? How are you going to bring about electricity security in the country? Those are the answers that the ANC must give in the next 5 years in terms of addressing the situation of electricity in South Africa and so on. So those are the things that we need to address.
So to wrap it up, two more questions, if you will, SG. So we're doing this podcast right now. What do you think, or how do you think you could use it to help you mobilize ahead of the manifesto and the elections?
I believe mobilization is to be truthful to our people, and then is to use our stretch on the ground and to be in touch with the voter, including those who are despondent. That's what we need to do. Podcast will get our message to interesting spaces. Others may not even be interested to watch the podcast because it's a podcast of a political party, ANC, self-defense. So the real podcast is the one, where in which you've got or people who are critical of the ANC. Because to be popular these days, you must criticize the ANC. So people will look at that podcast, not the ANC. So this podcast to me is got to be informative to an ANC voter, but it's got to be informative to the ANC member. It's got to be informative to the ANC activist who believe in the party and all of that. And then share information. And at the same time, over time, it will attract greater numbers. People love the ANC. There's lack of information. We live in the world of fake news. So this podcast is going to help us to put the record straight.
How have people been receiving you on the ground since you are here in KwaZulu-Natal?
I mean, you can see, it's unbelievable. All over. People coming out in numbers. I've just finished a rally now of women in eThekwini. I see people passing people all over the country. It's not going to happen here. These comrades have proven beyond reasonable doubt that our organization is alive here. It has got members. It is multiplying every day. It has got volunteers. It has got people who are carrying on with the ideas and the dream of the ANC to work for our people and all of that. So, and it's not a shock. I was actually surprised when people thought the ANC is dead. When we got
Who said that?
Yeah, no, in Bombela. When the stadium was full, small stadium, they said, no, hey, this thing of not liking the ANC is our thing only here on Twitter. We thought this thing is done and dusted, it's dead. I said, who else can ever think of the ANC dead? I mean, that's why they call it an elephant, but it's good. And then others started to propagate that elections are going to be rigged. Hey, this and that, what they are going to do. A political party that cannot stretch its capacity in the whole of the Free State, leave alone KwaZulu-Natal, want to claim that elections will be rigged. You know, to contest elections, we've got more than 22,700 VDs. In those VDs, each and every one of them, even those that are hostile, we deploy as the ANC. A political party that can't even stretch, beyond Peter Marisburg. They say they're going to get 2/3 majority. And then people believe this thing, and then there is a song that follows. You can see a pipe dream. Nje, kuvunyelana ngomqoki nje, things are going to be fine. We're in charge. I mean, it doesn't work like that. And they will start to realize, because we worked hard to get things done as the youth of the ANC. They've never been in a space where they've contested on their own and run an election and win. We have done it. And there's nothing different from this election. The ANC will lose this election if its machinery, which is what it has carried the ANC over the years, is dead and is unable to carry the mass of our people to the voting on the day of the election and marshal the forces. That's what is important for the ANC, because everybody is hostile. Even people, some of them whom you know, they are belonging to the ANC family, they are doubtful. And then I was talking to some friends, armchair critics, who sit on WhatsApp groups the whole week. And then they just said, no, you won't get 50%. I said, but comrade, at what point? And then they refer you to the polls. I said, at what point were the polls correct about the election? In 1999, they polled us very low because they said Mandela is gone. Thabo Mbeki is aloof, is not known. We won. We contested the most difficult election with COPE and Zuma facing charges of corruption. We got 65%. As much as we dropped, we got 65%. Because we went all out and we used our capacity to actually. So people love the ANC.
SG,
there is no alternative.
I have to say, with your history in the Youth League, this is a little bit off script, but if you'll allow me, we have decided that there's a problem with our youth currently. I'm not sure if it's not having structure, not having challenges, I'm not sure, but our youth seems to be unfocused currently. And people have talked about bringing back conscription, where they go to the army. As a member of the Youth League, a former member, what can you say to the youth who are watching us today to get them back in focus? I'm not too sure what the future then looks like for this country.
You see, you've got to continuously get youth interested with politics. Politics is the way of life. It's only that politics has been made to be a taboo, that to be a politician, you are a liar. And then professional politics, formal politics of being a parliamentarian and all of that, politicians are people who are untruthful and so on. That disinterest the youth. What interests the youth in the country? It's not a new phenomenon. It's not only a phenomenon here in South Africa. Advanced democracies, youth. And that's why there's a concept called political apathy. It's a question of disinterested people. Here in South Africa, the youth is aware, but they don't participate.
Why?
In terms of being active and all of that. And it's generally a global phenomenon, and which must actually be addressed. Also because the youth believe in new challenges, they need to be challenged. Ours has sort of been about personal and self-aggrandizement. What is in for me? If I'm in, then I can be prepared to go. What is the question before the South African youth when you go to them with politics? It's a way of life. When you go to work, you wake up every day, you get inconvenienced. How you respond to those challenges is politics. But the question of the youth of our country, where we need to take them out of, is this personal aggrandizement. What is in for me? Come and perform at the ANC rally or any other rally. No, I can't perform, or whatever that it is. Come and participate in this and that. No, I can't because there is nothing. Yeah, there's no money. And yet, active citizenry means you do something about your situation by being active. Politics is about being active and volunteer your services to something that doesn't pay. There is World Cup in the country. I want to be paid to volunteer my services to it. But if I volunteer my services in the World Cup, I become a better person after it. I've met people from foreign countries. They've told me stories. Out of that interaction, I became a better person part. These people opened up avenues and things for me to do, even because of my voluntary skills that I've acquired out of the World Cup. I've now ended up being a broadcaster. I'm this and that I've not planned. When we got involved in politics at the age of 14, I can't tell you the date and time. I just found myself in front of the students, addressing them and telling them about the struggle. The activism just took me over. And to convince them every day that, look, this is the right thing. As much as the struggle was hard, fought, and all, not all of us believed in the struggle. They believed that we are wasting our time, we are young terrorists, and at the same time, we are useless, we are failures. We'll never succeed in life. And all what they need to do as young people at school, because they were depoliticized, is to be straight and narrow, go to school, study Bantu education, pass. You'll become a teacher, a policeman, not even a doctor, because Bantu education didn't teach you to get to be a doctor. You can end up being a nurse. All those were reserved for us. So we were fighting the system. We wanted to destroy it for what has come to be a new dispensation today that produces actuaries, that produces engineers and all of that. Those things under apartheid were not there, but our conviction carried us. But when we talk about the past, everyone speaks as if he was there in the forefront. They were not there. They were with us. We forced them out of classrooms. We went to jail, we were arrested, tear gas, tortured by the enemy. And there was no hope that these ones would get anywhere. Some of our comrades died along the way. We called ourselves the victims because we survived. We called ourselves the survivors because we survived. But others didn't. Even today, there are people who just don't believe in terms of partaking in simple things. Let me do something beyond just getting into fun and drown in it. If without fun, what do? I see young people so active who are successful in their conscience. They think on their own. I've got 100,000 in the bank at the beginning of the school. Let me spend 20,000 to buy school kids, uniform, and all of that voluntarily. Those things move me and make me believe that there is hope, because it's consciousness. Mm-hmm. Once a person, when he's successful and has got, and through their talents, this, and is conscious to the effect that I've got to uplift others, then it's easy to tell that person participate. And that person voluntarily will vote. I mean, our celebrities and well-known people, without even telling people what to vote for, they are just not in the mood to tell people it is the right thing to vote. And they must go and vote. They don't do that. So what do you do with your fame? You only want us to remember you when you are down. But when you were famous, what did you do about it? And you look at young people, they do something about their fame. I'm famous. I became a DJ. I did not finish my school. And then I'm this person who's admired because of my music. I share part of my wealth, my heart-earned wealth and talent, through my talent with young people. That is moving. So how you deal with the youth is that you need to keep encouraging. And then you don't have to say to them, for instance, let government do something for you, then on the basis of that in return, I will vote. It shouldn't be the question, why should I vote? Because I've got nothing, I'm at home, I'm unemployed and all of that. The question is, participating and voting is citizen activism. And that's it. Whether you vote for the ANC, yes, I would love you to vote for the ANC, or anybody, is citizen consciousness. And that is what we need to teach our youth. But equally, our education must do that. Now, our youth are getting education in the former Model C schools, private schools. Those youth there understand politics but skewed. That transformation is not something they need to pursue. All what they've achieved is because of their own talents and their parents' ability and affordability. It's got nothing to do with the fact that it's because of the new dispensation. New dispensation, AMA 2000s, doesn't exist. So they look at things that my daughter probably will look at things and maybe become the most reactionary. Yes, my father was in politics. I'm not into that. I've achieved what I've achieved because they've supported me, but it's out of my talents. And they become the most conscious. And these are the people who will then say, there was no revolution in South Africa. All what happened is that blacks came into power and then they believe this thing that they messed up and we are on the right path, because that is the leak in our society that is getting conscientized. They've never known about electricity and connected to the grid. It is the ANC in the rural areas. They never even envy to have electricity. I mean, when I went to Joburg and I came back home.
That's the gap. That education hasn't been delivered.
When I went to Joburg and I came back home in a shack where we're living, and then I asked them, hey, where do you get electricity? Because Mbashiebe 7 is in Baul. When I came back, they had a coupon in the thing, but I see at all from Dana in the Mkukwin.
Okay.
But I was forgetting up. 1994, 1996, the ANC connected our people through shack, in the shacks and everywhere else. But tenga makupon. Ekai. Mtanam tumeleli mali. My mom. Ndizokwazi uthenga i-coupon ndikwazi upheka. But all along ubepheka ngantoni? Primer stove and everything else. Ngoku ubeyali no more stove. Izinto estofini. And then we are press. Of course, gas there and there. But they didn't use gas. Electricity was brought in. And that in itself is a better life because the basic needs electricity, water. And then it is a house for free. Mm-hmm. And then these are the things that a democratic government and the ANC did. And then we are told by being brainwashed that nothing has happened.
That's where we'll leave it, SG. I think that's a good place to leave it. A name in one word or two. A name for the podcast, if you had to give us a name.
You.
One word or two.
Focus and then.
There you go. That's what I said. And that's it from us, ladies and gentlemen, friends and comrades. If you've got an idea of what this podcast should be named, we are available on Instagram, X, and TikTok. Look out for us and let us know. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no, you must.
Focus.
Yeah, focus.